I'm Insomniac, and this is the Montblanc Timewalker. Okay, note number one, all of the watch specs are now down in the video description if you'd like to see those. Also, if you own one of these, leave comments down below. Let everybody know what you think of yours. User feedback helps other people make informed purchase decisions, so, do it. Also, if you have any watches that you'd like to see featured on the channel, email me at shouldItimetthis@gmail.com. I'll let you know where to send the watches. They'll be reviewed and sent back. All right, let's get into the watch. The case on the Timewalker starts a common theme that you're going to see me point out throughout the entire review. A theme of subtlety that makes the entire watch understated, almost to a fault. At first glance, this stainless steel case is shaped and finished like a million other watches, which makes the case almost instantly forgettable, unless you look more closely. Starting with the machining, every angle is crisp and purposefully made. You don't get the impression of some kind of cheap cookie cutter case here. Even down to the corners and underside surfaces of the lug tips, everything is uniform, crisp, and precise. You also have these sections in the sides of the lugs that are carved out at a progressive depth, getting deeper the closer you get to the lug tips. That's not something that you usually see on this case shape with other brands. Your screw-down exhibition case back continues this trend. Doesn't look unique necessarily, but the machining and engraving are excellent. The case back is very slim, so it fits almost flat against the back of the case, which adds to the sleek, thin feel on the wrist. The view of Montblanc's Calibre MB 24.17 movement isn't bad either. Moving on to the bezel and crown, same thing. The black bezel and crown combo have a cool contrast against the stainless backdrop, but at first glance there's nothing special about either of these. A closer inspection shows a beautifully polished, slightly angled ceramic bezel with precise engravings for the numerals and markers, with excellent knurling around the outside that not only looks great, but has a great grip for such a small surface. That same knurling is used on the crown, which makes winding and setting the watch a breeze, despite the crown being fairly small to fit the slim profile of the watch. Honestly, the only thing I didn't love about the entire case was the bezel action. The turn feels and sounds a bit cheap, and there's more play in the mechanism than I'd expect for a watch in this price range, but let's be honest, most people aren't going to use the bezel on this watch, so if that's the only negative here, I'm sure we can live with it. The dial on this watch is the best example of the overly subtle, understated theme of this piece. For the first week I wore this watch, I showed it to friends and family members who literally all described the watch as nice, but kinda boring. And at first glance I would agree. It's a brushed stainless silver dial with black accents and black hands. It's super airy, almost to the extent of feeling empty. Nothing really catches the eye other than the red second hand and red series name. But look closer. The sunburst brushing effect used for the surface of the dial is beautifully done to an extent that could rightly be called elegant. It's not overdone to where it's a super noticeable texture to the dial, but the way the dial plays with light to give you various shades and hues of gray and silver depending on how you move your wrist is just beautiful. At the outer edge of the dial you have an angled black chapter ring which has small luminescent markers for every 5-minute interval, and a simple line-style minute track with an even smaller half-interval track marked between those for a little bit of added visual texture. The applied markers on the dial are just the right size to be small and understated, yet large enough to have presence and legibility without being too big or cartoonish. The fairly wide, flat font used for the numerals looks great here, and the odd interval stick-style markers break up the black a little bit with the thin strips of luminescent filling. And the hands, same thing. Who hasn't seen polished steel sword-style hands on a silver watch before? But the polishing is beautiful. The width of the hands is perfect, and the length of the hands is a textbook lesson on what the hand lengths should be on a dial this size. With the minute hand just a hair away from the minute track, the hour hand significantly shorter for differentiating quickly between the two, and that sporty red second hand finished in red that adds some pop here. The tip of that hand literally extended over the chapter ring. It's all just beautifully done and creates a simple yet carefully detailed and balanced clean look to the watch as a whole. The only usable complication on this watch is the date function at 3 o'clock. It's large enough and easy to read, it works, it's a useful complication, and it doesn't stand in the way of any other visual feature on the dial, so no complaints. The lume on this watch is the only thing I can honestly say isn't very good. With the exception of the lume filling in the hands, which has a bit more surface area to make it more effective in holding a good charge, all of the markers have such tiny areas of luminescent filling that even with a full lume charge like you see here, the glow isn't very bright and doesn't last very long. Time at a glance on this watch is excellent. You have perfect contrast between the light steel dial and everything else. The dial layout has no visual clutter to it. You have great defined tips on all three hands, and despite the minute track on the chapter ring being small, the mix of great contrast with the length of the minute hand makes finding the exact time on this watch very simple. bracelet on the Timewalker continues the trend we've been talking about throughout this entire review. Simple to the extent of almost seeming generic, but again, we have a couple extras here. It's your standard 3-link steel design that you see on everything from $60 Chinese sale watches on up, but the thickness and weight of the bracelet balance the watch body perfectly. The brushed finish is well done and uniform, and if you look down here at the bottom, rather than your standard fold-over locking clasp, they went with the hidden clasp, which creates this unbroken bracelet look here at the bottom, so you can't see the clasp when you're wearing it. And the bonus here is comfort. Many of us, myself included, don't usually like the hidden clasp mechanism because it has a tendency to dig into your wrist throughout the day, making it aesthetically pleasing but functionally annoying. I've been wearing this watch for weeks and found it to be very comfortable, so they did an excellent job fitting and angling this clasp to look and feel like class. Last but not least, we have value. As of right now, this watch retails online for $3,525. But at the same time I'm recording this video, I found it on one reputable retail site for $1,325. For that price, you're getting a watch from a brand that has some serious heritage, a great movement, top-tier build quality, and subtle details that, as I said earlier in the video, 99% of the people around you might probably miss, but you're going to get to enjoy every time you wear it. So personally, after spending time with this watch for that price, I would actually say that this is a very good value. Alright, again, if you have one of these, definitely leave comments down below. Let everybody else know what you think of it. I am curious about your thoughts on the Timewalker. Do you think it's a boring watch, or do you agree that there's a lot to dig into when you look closer? Drop your comments down below. I actually have a few more watch reviews coming very soon on a couple of really nice pieces, so stay tuned.